So we're going to continue from where we left off in Perek Lamed Hey, chapter 35 of the Tanya. We already began chapter 35 last week, so we'll complete the chapter tonight, and then we'll go on to chapter 36, Perek Lamed Vav. Just a quick introduction about the concealment of Hashem. As you know, what makes it difficult for many to believe in Hashem and to comply with His word is that they don't see Him, or at least that's what they claim. Even though it is obvious to those who just observe the creation that there is a master, that there is a boss, there is someone that created all of this for some purpose. But it is in fact something that is difficult to see if one does not study Torah, if one does not receive some sort of information from someone directing him as to what the purpose of all of this is. He can lose track, or he can become distracted and not realize, even though it is possible to realize, but it's possible also to not realize that there is this God because of his concealment, intentional concealment to enable free will. The Kabbalah teaches that you can see this concealment from the fact that 2/3 of the globe is water and 1/3 is earth, continents. Why did Hashem make the world like that? Why is there more water than there is earth? And perhaps there's more than one explanation, but in the Kabbalah it is mentioned that the water represents the concealment. We don't see what is underneath the water. The water covers up a good deal of the globe. And that covering up, that concealment, is in some way a representation of the concealment of Hashem, but not just of Hashem, but the concealment of a lot which is not known to us. In other words, the Kabbalah says there's a lot more unknown to us than that which can be known. The human being, with all his great prowess, with his knowledge and experience, is limited. We're all physically limited. Our minds are limited to what we can see, to what we can know. Life is short. And even if we have a vast archive of information of previous generations, as you all know, technology changes every day, and much of what they believed or knew in the past has become obsolete. So much knowledge is being revealed almost every day. And that is not only expounding our knowledge base of what we know about the world, of what we know about the human being, the anatomy of the human being, but also about space. But here comes the surprise. Even space is so much more unknown than there is known, and there will always be a lot more that we will never know, no matter how many discoveries we make, no matter how powerful our telescopes are. And I was thinking about this idea of how in space one can also see how so much is unknown is because of the vast distances. Billions of light years, no longer 1 light year, 2 light years, 100 light years, 1,000 light years. It's already billions of light years that they can detect, at least, that there is something out there at such distances. Now, what does that tell you? Perhaps it tells you that there is a lot more out there than what we could ever know. If this is so distant from us, if there's so many stars, billions and billions of stars, just think about it. There's so much more out there than what we could ever know. So that is a very important point, that Hashem has given us signs that there's so much we will never know, especially while we are alive in this physical world. Because being alive means that we're limited, much more than if we are in the upper worlds, in the spiritual worlds. That which is physical is much more limited than that which is spiritual. The physical world has limits, has limitations. We see them. We see the room, right? We see people. We see limitations. It's not that it's unending. We can see the earth, more or less, depending on how high you are with the satellite. You can see all the ends of the earth. We can't see it. right? There's always something blocking our view, whether it's a building, right, or something else that does not enable us to see further in the distance, and our eyesight too. But if you were high enough above the earth, you would see the entire earth. You would not see the entire universe. So this is a very important idea, I believe, that reminds us how small we are, how minuscule the earth is compared to everything else. And somehow this earth is the most important part of creation. That is where all the focus is. Not only because we live here, because as far as we can tell, there is no life anywhere else. I said as far as we can tell. It doesn't mean there isn't. As far as we can tell. Because this is the focus of attention. The earth is in a particular spot in space where it receives the heat, the energy that it needs. If it would be too far, we would freeze. If it would be too close, it would be too hot. The way it works is incredible. The balance of gases in order for us to breathe. There's so much in the physics of life that is just incredible, how perfect it is. Perfect design. Still, even though so much is revealed to us, we can see so much, a lot more is concealed. Is it possible for us to gain any more insight into that area which is concealed? Yes, through the Torah, through the Kabbalah. There's additional information. But even with the Torah and the Kabbalah, there's so much that we can know while we are alive because of our physical limitations. Ki lo yir'ani adam v'chai. As Hashem says, no one can see me and live. In other words, while one is alive, we cannot see Hashem completely. We can see His footprint. We can see traces of that which is divine, and we can experience it as well. People have experienced Hashem. Therefore, they know that He exists, each one in his way. History is replete with miracles, so we know that Hashem is present, but He's concealed. And it's up to mankind to reveal Him. That is part of the tachlit that we will be talking about in this perek, part of the purpose of life. It is mankind who is told to reveal Him. Hashem is not going to reveal Himself, except for once in Matan Torah, when He gave the Torah, and after that when Mashiach comes. In the meantime, that is His plan, for man to bring the Shekhinah, the divine presence, into this world, which is really another way of saying to reveal Hashem, to reveal divinity in this physical world, to elevate that which is physical to a more spiritual state by sanctifying it. And the way all of that is done is by observing His mitzvot, His commandments. However, we don't really see too much the consequences of all that. What benefit do we gain from revealing the light of Hashem? What exact benefit comes out as a result of learning Torah, except for receiving direction? So the Tanya has been speaking at length about the Or, HaShekhinah, about the divine light that permeates the entire world. However, even though this divine light permeates the entire world, as we will see, it all depends on the receptacle, on the vessel. Some have more, and some have less. And some have it just on the outside. It doesn't permeate them through and through. It's an or mekif, as the Kabbalah calls it. A light that envelops one just from the outside. It doesn't penetrate too much. What difference does it make? Again, what are we gaining from this light? What is this light for? Well, the light serves various purposes. As we began to explain last week, in order for the divine presence to be in this world, to surround man, and to give him the vitality that he needs, what's required of him is ma'asim tovim, good deeds, because the good deeds are the fuel or the oil that light needs. So even though the divine presence is here regardless, it does not mean that it affects the human being. In order for that light to somehow affect him, to positively influence him and give him that spiritual vitality that he needs to overcome his evil inclination, to deal with those challenges, he needs to do something about it. So I'm already giving you an idea of ultimately what this light does. Even though he doesn't clearly say it in this chapter, what this light does, but we've talked about it in the past, that it is only through the help of Hashem that we are able to conquer the evil inclination. And I think everybody's pretty much aware that there is such a thing called the Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination that does battle constantly with us. And many, many people lose that battle, either because they don't try hard enough or they don't want to. They're just happy living their life that way. They don't think about following instructions of a God that they don't see. But those who have more clarity about the purpose of life, what we're doing here, what our mission is, they realize that it's an important battle that needs to be fought, not only to succeed. It's not so much about success. It's about fulfilling the wishes of Hashem, to make this world his abode, where he can dwell. The Shekhinah wants to be present here in this physical world. And we'll explain why that needs to happen that way, that the Shekhinah should come down into this world. After all, it is everywhere. So what exactly do we mean by bringing down the Shekhinah here? What benefit do we get from it? Why is that so important? So towards the end of chapter 35, he elaborates just a little bit more on the word la'asoto. As you recall, in the pasuk, in the verse in the Torah, it tells us how accessible the Torah is. Beficha u'bilvabecha la'asoto. In your mouth, in your heart, to do. And that means that it's important to act. Action, deeds, are the ultimate purpose. Not just to talk about it, not just to think about it, not only to have a good heart, but actually to put these things to work. Actions speak louder than words. There's a saying in Russian like that. Because a lot of people know how to talk. They make promises, but words are cheap. In the end, actions is what matters. This is how we will be rewarded, according to our tradition, through our actions, even though thoughts are important too. Actions are more important than anything else. In the same way, negative actions could be very damaging. Positive actions do a lot, not only for this world, but for the individual himself. So we left off with this idea that la'asoto is the ultimate goal. So we learn in order to comply, in order to accomplish. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about the difference on how the Ora Shekhinah affects the individual, whether he does a maaseh, a mitzvah, or whether he just thinks about it, he learns Torah, he prays, he says Tehillim. So this Ora Shekhinah, this divine light, we said before, is not just Hashem's presence here in this world. It is a source of vitality. It is something that really can elevate us, not only to greater insights, to have greater insights, but depending on the level of sanctity of the individual, he can be zocheh to Ruach HaKodesh, to divine inspiration. He can be zocheh to nevuah, to prophecy. Because the more one is batel, as we've said before, the more one nullifies himself before Hashem, through his deeds, through his comportment, and becomes holier, he becomes more spiritual, he's really more connected to Hashem. The more connected one he is with Hashem, even his dreams are purer. He basically is always directly connected and sees all kinds of things, including future events. It's just a whole different experience when one is enveloped through and through with this divine light. But he says there's a difference whether one does a maaseh, a good deed, which obviously will attract or draw this divine light into him, versus one who just learns Torah and says Tehillim or prays to Hashem. The ashpa'ah, the influence, will be different through machshava and dibur. Because when one studies Torah, then what is happening is that the two inner levushim, the two inner garments, the machshava, thought, and the dibur, these are inner garments, as opposed to the outer garment. The outer garment of the neshama is the action, the deed. So when one learns, the inner garments are being affected and are being included or become one with the light of Hashem. This is what we mean by Ashrat HaShekhinah al Nafsho Elokit. In other words, that the divine light is residing over his Nefesh Eloki. As a result of a Jew learning Torah, he's already drawing that light and making a connection where the Shekhinah resides on him, directly on him. As the rabbis mentioned, even if an individual on his own is sitting and learning Torah, the Shekhinah is with him. But if you want to draw that light, that Shekhinah, onto the entire physical body and onto the Nefesh HaBehemi, the animal spirit, for that one needs to observe mitzvot, ma'asiyot. In other words, one has to physically do a mitzvah through his physical body. Then what happens? Then the physical body, or I should say the physical vitality that results from performing this mitzvah, there's a certain hayut, a certain physical vitality. That physical vitality is included in the light of Hashem, which is the third levush of the Nefesh Eloki, the third garment. The third garment meaning the actions. So the actions that are being performed bring about that the koach, the physical vitality that went into them, are included in the light of Hashem. Now, this is very, very important, because when that happens, when all of that koach, all of that vitality that was done with physical action is included in the light of Hashem, then that has the effect that even his nefesh ha-behemi and the guf, the physical body and the physical spirit, the nefesh ha-behemi, are elevated. Remember that physical spirit that we said comes from klipat noga, which is a mixture of good and bad. Performing mitzvot means that we will elevate that which is physical to a higher level, from bad to good. So he's already telling us that the mitzvot accomplish something in this world, which we spoke about last week, that the Sefer HaChinuch says, "Acharei ha'peulot nimshachot halevavot." In other words, through our actions, we actually improve ourselves. We become better people. Imagine somebody who's stingy. The more tzedakah that he does on a regular basis, it transforms him eventually. These habits become second nature. So that's just a habit. Here, his neshama, or his nefesh ha-behemi, is being transformed. Even though, as he explains, this individual who's a benoni will never be able to transform entirely the ra, the midot haraot, the bad nature or the bad characteristics in him, to the level of a tzaddik, because that's how far he can go. As a benoni, as an average individual, he can transform them slightly, he can elevate them to a higher level, and that is a big accomplishment. And what is he exactly doing? By performing the mitzvah, he is enabling that or Shekhinah to envelop the physical body itself. And when that happens, the physical body and the nefesh ha-behemi become more spiritual, become more elevated. As we will see later on, there's a certain concept called hizdakechut. Hizdakechut means when something is purified. When Mashiach comes, the world will be purified. Physical bodies will be purified. Those that will rise in Tchiyat HaMetim will be pure. We'll get to that soon. There's a certain purification that happens when all the tumah is removed from the world. But that won't happen until Mashiach comes. All the impure forces will be removed. In the meantime, we can't eradicate it completely. It's there. It's still there for the Benoni, that is. But it could be dormant. You know, people who have been addicted, and they've, thank God, succeeded in controlling the addiction. Ask them if they still crave for whatever it is that they had a craving for in the past. They'll tell you yes. They still crave for it, but they control themselves. They realize how disastrous this has been to them, their families, their life. So it's there. So they still are doing battle, but they're controlling themselves. That's good. Exact same idea. So when one does mitzvot, it's not just that he's being a good boy or a good girl. He's actually benefiting from this. This will eventually elevate him to a higher spiritual level, which therefore will affect his physical body and his nefesh habehemi as well. So, why should this nefesh habehemi be elevated? After all, we're talking about something spiritual here. The nefesh habehemi, or I should say the guf, the physical body, these are all physical. How does it really have any effect on that which is physical? And the answer is that is one of the reasons why Hashem gave us an intermediary nefesh of sorts, a medium called nefesh habehemi between the nefesh eloki, the divine spirit, and the physical body. So the nefesh habehemi that we all have, that physical drive that we feel, that basically pumps the blood, and through it we have our desires and so forth, that acts as a medium, or as a bridge between the nefesh eloki and the guf. It enables, therefore, that spirituality to come over and affect both of them. And as a result of it doing certain mitzvot, it gets credit too. As I've explained in the past, that is the purpose, or one of the reasons for Techiyat HaMetim, is to give credit to the physical body that worked so hard. Otherwise, who needs Techiyat HaMetim? Why should that rise? Let's just go straight to Gan Eden, to Olam Haba, to the world to come. There's a period of time that Hashem said, I want the neshama to be back in its original body. Let them both enjoy the world to come, which will be a more spiritual world, with all the challenges and all the difficulties and problems that we've had now. So, as we said, even though the midot haraot, that which is bad in this nefesh habehemi, stays and does not necessarily get transformed completely, and is not part of the kedusha altogether, like by the tzaddik, still, a tremendous accomplishment happened here. It kafya, in other words, it was able to subdue the sitra achara, the klipot, the impurities to the kedusha. And as he says, to the point of them saying, Bal Korcham Amen. In other words, they have no choice but to say, okay, I agree, I concede, I yield. In other words, to a point where one has gained an upper hand over the Yetzer Hara, that is a really big achievement. How does that happen? That the sitra achara, or the klipot, concede. That comes about through itgabrut hanefesh elokit, through somehow the divine nefesh, the divine soul, has gained the upper hand, has become stronger. And as a result of it having the upper hand, it was able to use the moach to overcome the lev, use the brains to overcome the heart. Because that's where the nefesh elokit is, in the head. So somehow, it gained the upper hand. It was able to overcome the animal physical drive by using the head and not the heart. So that's where the decisions should be made, not in the heart, in the head, through the nefesh eloki. So when the nefesh eloki wins, it's because a decision was made with the moach, acting in a more powerful way than the heart, because the two are at odds many times. They don't agree. What the heart wants, the head says no. Doesn't make sense, it's not right for you. And we see this in a lot of areas in life. People who are overweight, they know that this is not good for them, or if they're diabetic, right? But what can we do? The heart says, I want it. I desire it. You see what I mean? So there's this continuous struggle. And when the head wins, that's a very, very important achievement. So here we're talking about a general victory, not just a one-time event, that one has succeeded in overcoming his evil inclination by using his head, by using the nefesh eloki to defeat or to overcome the challenges posed through the nefesh habehemi, the animal spirit. What happens then? So we said before, we didn't drive out the bad from the nefesh habehemi, it's still there. But it is as though begalut or beshena, as he says, it is in the form of exile or asleep. It's dormant. It's inactive. It's not acting up as much. And therefore, if this nefesh eloki succeeded in subduing the sitra achara that is part of the nefesh habehemi, and therefore all that is bad in that nefesh habehemi, even though it's not transformed, is dormant. As en meni'ah, then there's nothing preventing the ora shechina, right, from coming down and residing in that individual, even in his body and in his nefesh habehemi. But we will soon see that it's different. It's different when we talk about the ora shechina on the body. It's not exactly the same thing as it is on the nefesh eloki. This, after all, is more physical. But at least, if he's in charge, if the nefesh eloki is in charge, and this could happen through doing mitzvot and through controlling his nefesh habehemi, if he wins, if he's mitgaber, in other words, if he gets the upper hand, then there's nothing holding back the Shekhinah from actually permeating, or I should say from enveloping the physical body as well. Okay, so just to explain this a little bit more, the koach, the vitality of the mitzvah that was performed is dressed up in the mitzvah. In other words, what he just performed, any mitzvah that he just performed has a certain, with his physical body, has a certain vitality. That koach, that energy you want to call it, that was just generated through performing the mitzvah, that can be included in the light of Hashem. And when that happens, he's able to draw like a ray of light from that light to the physical body and to the nefesh habehemi. However, when that ray of light comes down and envelops the physical body, that's all it does. It envelops. It does not penetrate. And that in Kabbalah is called or mekif, or at least this is a type of or mekif. The Shekhinah here acts on the outside, not on the inside. Well, is there any way to get that light to go inside all the way? Obviously, that would make a big difference to the individual. He would be completely elevated. But the way it works is the average person, the Benoni, is never able to elevate himself to that level of tzaddik where he has completely removed the nirah. So he's lucky if he has that light surrounding him at all times. And it's interesting that some great tzaddikim were able to see this light on an individual when they came across them. They were surprised, and they realized that this man must have done something special, that he has this light around him. And this light is also a light of protection. This light is not just a light. I mean, when we think of light, what does the light mean? That he sees better? No, it's much more than that. He actually gains a lot more strength as a result of the light being next to him. But unfortunately, people drive away the light by not doing certain mitzvot, and they don't realize that they're hurting themselves by not performing certain mitzvot. It's just like the immune system. The physical immune system can become weakened as a result of not eating right. And then the body's supposed to fight off all the bacteria, but it doesn't have the power to do so. It doesn't have the strength to do so. Same thing with the spiritual immune system. That's the way I describe it. We have a spiritual immune system, which is provided to us through the nefesh eloki, in a sense. But it can only do so much. If we don't give it that oil, as we said last week, through the maasim tovim, then it can't really do the battle that it's supposed to do. Hashem wants to help, but He only helps those who want to help themselves. So there's a verse about malachim, even angels protecting one. Angels that are created through our maasim. Another form of protection. Mezuzah is a protection on one's door, one's home. Tzitzit that you wear is a form of protection. So these are all mitzvot, but they are also a form of protection that we need from all kinds of elements out there, including evil spirits. If one is not protected, then they come at you. Take, for example, wild animals. Wild animals are supposed to fear a human being as long as he has the image of Hashem on him. But if he has no image of God on him, in other words, he's completely indifferent to what the Torah says, doesn't care, and is immersed in things that that are forbidden, then he's drawing much more of the impurity on himself, and it has very little kedusha. Then the animals see him as another animal, or worse. So they attack him. Daniel was not attacked when he was in the lion's den. Why? Because he was a tzaddik. He had the tzelem elokim on him. Why should, even though they were hungry, why should the lions attack him? So this is all related to the Ora Shekhinah, to having the higher level of kedusha in this individual. And because of the higher level of kedusha, he's not subject to all the elements, the harmful elements that exist out there. They don't come close to him. So this is what he says, this is what the Zohar meant by Shechinta Shari al Resha. The Shekhinah resides on the head, meaning that it's mekif. It surrounds, it envelops, it does not penetrate all the way, at least not for this individual at this stage of just performing a mitzvah or two. Remember, as a result of the Shekhinah being something spiritual and the physical body being something physical, it doesn't completely take over. Because if it would, let's say it would be very difficult sometimes for an individual in another way. I'll give you an example. He talks later on about how the concealment of Hashem happens through all kinds of levushim, all kinds of garments that cover him up. And if those garments would not exist, we would not be able to handle the light of Hashem. We would be batel b'metziut. We would be completely nullified. Just like we can't look at the sun unless you have special filters. Could you imagine looking at Hashem? It's impossible while we're alive. So the physical body, in a sense, acts as a barrier. It does not enable us to see everything, but in some ways that's good. That we can ask. So for the Shekhinah to permeate completely the individual, it is possible only if he has elevated himself to a very, very high level where he has become spiritual, and that it becomes more compatible. A tzaddik is on a level where his neshama and his guf is much more in line or in sync with the kedusha. So he's able to handle it better. As we will soon see, one who learns Torah, the Torah gives him oz, gives him strength to handle that revelation a lot better. But even so, just by performance of mitzvot, we're able to get the Ora Shekhinah in the form of mekif. Whereas the actual ma'asim tovim, the nefesh eloki, those are more spiritual in nature and they can be one with Hashem. Now, he says like this, this light of Hashem, this hamshachat Ora Shekhinah, that we draw the light of the Shekhinah, which is the revelation of the Ora and Sof, this does not bring about any shinui, any change, chas v'shalom, in Hashem, or a plurality, God forbid. Even though there's all kinds of lights, we're talking about all kinds of levels, all kinds of lights, it would seem to appear, chas v'shalom, that maybe there's more than one type of light coming from Hashem. And that leads one to possibly think that there's a plurality of Shekhinah here. And this was a question that was posed to Rabbi Gamliel in the Gemara by a heretic, a meme, who asked him basically this question: how many Shekhinot are there? You know, we talk about so many different kinds of light, so many kinds of Shekhinot. And Rabbi Gamliel told him a mashal with the light of the sun. There's one light of the sun that is able to come through all the windows in the city. It's all one source. So what is really changing? Not the source, the window, the object, the receptacle. As I said before, it all depends on the receptacle. Can it absorb more light or less light? But it's coming from the same source of light. So it's not that the light is different, it's that we are different. Some get it more, some get it less, some don't get it at all almost. Or just on a very, very low key from the outside as an or mekif. it all depends what he did, we said before. Did he perform a mitzvah, or did he just learn Torah and not perform an action? Performing the action is much more important, more powerful. It draws more of a light. And the physical body that was involved in the mitzvah gets a lot of credit for it. Because that vitality that was used, that came about through the performance of mitzvot, is included in the light of Hashem as well. So, as a result of that, the individual himself is being transformed, not completely, but something is happening to him. Definitely, on a certain level, he is transformed, he is a changed person. The biggest proof for this, that people change and become better, is look around. I mean, people have done teshuvah. How do you explain that? Why should somebody want to be a better person? Why should somebody decide, really from now on, I'm going to really commit myself to pray and to do mitzvot and to be kind to people, to be merciful? What's going on in him? Obviously, there's something happening in that neshama that is all of a sudden able to see something that he wasn't seeing before. Think of someone who is mature, and 20 years ago he wasn't as mature. That we see. That we can also see. It's a fact of life. You don't think when you're 40 or 50 what you thought when you were 20. A lot has happened. A lot of changes have occurred in this individual. He has matured. The mind is more developed, and he's more experienced. He has seen more. He has greater clarity about the world. Same thing here with teshuvah. When a person does teshuvah and wants to come back to Hashem, what's driving him? There's this light that is all of a sudden shining on him, that is propelling him, motivating him, giving him the strength to do battle with the Yetzer Hara, a battle that he may not have been even interested in fighting before. Forget about the fact that it was hard. He wasn't even interested in fighting. He told the Yetzer Hara, take me where you want. He didn't care. There are people like that. You know, they live for the day. They don't think about the consequences, what will happen tomorrow. So all of a sudden, these people who are doing teshuvah, something is happening to them, that the neshama is gaining the upper hand. When the neshama becomes stronger, when the individual becomes more spiritual, he's attracted to divinity. What about converts? The same thing. Why should somebody want to convert and have to observe 613 commandments? Who needs it? He has 7. Now you want more commandments? Why for? He's drawn to this. That's the only explanation. Unless, of course, he's converted because he wants to marry someone Jewish, or she wants to marry someone Jewish. That's not genuine. One on his own feels attracted to this. You know how many people risked their life to save another individual during the Holocaust? Why should they do it? Obviously, their neshama has a divine spark, and that divine spark is very powerful sometimes. But by many people, it's not lit. It's asleep or completely extinguished. And all they see is themselves. They don't care about other people as much. So look at what this light can do for a person. It can do a lot. You know, he doesn't get into all the details of what he does. Right now, he's mostly focused on the strength that this individual, this Benoni, needs to have to do battle. He needs to transform himself. He needs to elevate himself. Otherwise, you lose the battle. Constantly. And not just once a week. Regularly. Take a language. If you don't speak a language for a couple months, you're going to start forgetting the words. Right? You don't do exercise, the physical body, suffers. Avodat Hashem, the service of Hashem, requires constant vigilance, constant work, so that the light does not leave us, so that we have clarity all the time, so that we are strong, that we're able to resist. You know how many people are unaware about the dangers and the severity of Lashon Hara? Gossip, slander. They talk about other people as though it was a piece of cake. No, they just talk. They don't even realize what they're doing is so damaging, not only to the other individual, to themselves. What this is doing to the neshama. Take a person who's getting angry. You know what anger does to a person? It drives away the holy neshama from him. It's like he's worshipping idols. People don't realize this unless they learn. So when one learns and becomes aware, this has the power of potentially changing him. As we explained last week in the name of Rabbi Cook, it's a gradual procedure. You first have to be respectful of the religion. Then you will have hopefully a certain affection for it. You respect, you may eventually look up to it. Eventually you will want to become familiar with it. Eventually you will want to fulfill it. Right? You go out, man goes out with a woman, they want to date. No, it's not love at first sight, I'm sorry. Even though they say love at first sight, no, it can't be. That cannot be real. It's gradual. For those of you who have dated, you know that. It's not possible to really form a very strong connection that is real in one date. Then you have people who have been with each other for who knows how many years, and they finally decide to get married, and then they get divorced after a month. But wait a minute, they were with each other for who knows how many years. It wasn't a real relationship. A real relationship requires commitment and responsibilities. Living together is nothing of that. So that's why all of a sudden there was commitment. It broke up. It fell apart. Because commitment, responsibility demands something of an individual. And not everybody's willing to live up to that. So the Torah gives us the strength, gives us the direction, gives us the clarity, shows us how. And the best indicator that this works is Balei Teshuvah, as we were saying. People who have done Teshuvah have this light, have this clarity, have an additional strength that's coming from their neshama, Ha'elokit, from the divine soul, that is able to give them not only the strength to deal with the evil inclination, but enough of a motivation to continue to progress and grow and not stop. A lot of people just stop. Oh, it's too difficult. They don't realize that how important this is to them. So this is the difference between those who learn and those who do not learn. Those who learn have an advantage. And even those who learn don't think they have it easy. They still have a Yetzer Hara. People think, oh, this rabbi, he was caught doing something terribly wrong. The rabbi, that individual who maybe learned it, also has an evil inclination. He just hasn't worked on it. What did we say before with learning Torah? The learning of the Torah does draw the light of the Shekhinah, but it's not the same as doing mitzvot and ma'asim. When one performs, then that is a lot more powerful. And here he was talking about performance of mitzvot, but I'm also including holding yourself back from doing an avirah. As the rabbis tell us in the Gemara, whoever had an opportunity to do something wrong and held himself back, it's like he did a mitzvah. Even though he held himself back. Yes, that's also very special. That's also very important and powerful. It does something to the neshama. It gives a tremendous strength. You just defeated the sitra achara. You just lost, imagine, 100 pounds of impurity by holding yourself back. Yes, every time the Kabbalah says a man looks away from an immodest woman, he just looked away. He's already gained a certain amount of pounds, let's call it pounds of Kedusha, of holiness. Every time he lets his eyes wander, he's immersing himself in that. Then his thoughts are completely dirty. And then he has a hard time removing those thoughts. They always keep coming back. He says, why are they coming back? That's because you haven't worked hard enough to remove them. It requires work. All right, so we're going to continue. We were saying before that the light of Hashem always will depend on the receptacle and the vessel. Everyone will receive it depending on his preparation, depending on what he does. Now he continues on to explain why is la'asoto. Now we're entering Perek Lamed Vav, chapter 36. In the beginning of chapter 36, he's going to explain why is la'asoto so essential to do the mitzvot, to the point that we are told that it's only through la'asoto that we are able to accomplish the goal of life. In other words, the tachlit, the objective of the creation of the world involves la'asoto, because through la'asoto one is able to bring down the light to reside on his nefesh habehemi. Why is that so essential? That the light should come down on the nefesh habehemi and the animal soul. Why? Why does that make so much of a difference? That we're told that this is the tachlit, that this is the objective, the goal of creation. So he explains like this. It is known from the Midrash that part of the reason why Hashem created the world, the tachlit, was that Hashem wanted to have an abode here in this world, in the tachtonim, in the world here below. So before we go on, when we say the lower worlds, we have to understand what that means, lower worlds versus upper worlds. What's the difference between the upper worlds and the lower worlds? Basically, whatever is lower, the lower the world is, the more hester, the more concealment of Hashem there is. So in this physical world, the concealment is great, very, very strong. Now, even though we said upper and lower worlds, it's also important to point out, as he says, that for Hashem there's really no such thing as upper and lower. For Hashem it's all the same. He fills up Memaleh Kol Almin. He fills up the entire universe. So what do we mean upper and lower? Before the creation of the world, he was all by himself. And even though he's still pretty much by himself, at least after the creation of the physical world, there's the appearance as though there's something else. And as a result of his creations, by us, the light that we receive varies. What we mean by the light that is being received varies is because some have more levushim than others. Some have more garments than others. The upper worlds, for example, the stars, the galaxies, the spiritual world. I'm including the stars and galaxies. But in reality, what it means is the spiritual worlds. But even those, the reason I call them upper worlds, the stars and galaxies, not because they're above us, because they are really more spiritual in nature. They're less physical. This is, again, my idea. I once pointed out in a lecture about the galaxies and the stars. If you know a little bit about astronomy, you will notice that all the planets, except for Pluto, if you call that a planet, after Mars, in other words, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are mostly gas. They may have a small physical core, like the Earth, but isn't it interesting how you have on this side, Earth, the Moon, Venus, Mercury, and even Mars on the other side. It's earthy. It's a planet that is made out of some hard material. Whereas the planets beyond Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, as far as we can tell, most of it is gas. Why? Stars, it's the same thing. A lot of it is mostly gas. It's not like Mars. It's not like Venus. They're hard. There must be a reason for it. And my explanation had to do with those worlds or those planets being more spiritual, therefore more refined. Just gas versus being partially earth, which is more physical. But anyway, it's an interesting observation that even in those worlds there are those planets or stars that are less physical than our planet. So after Hashem created the world, we all receive His light. The light is everywhere, but it all depends on how many levushim there are, how many garments there are. Because what those garments do is that they conceal that light of Hashem. The more garments there are, the more concealment there is. Why do we have to have these garments? As I said earlier, Kilo Irani Adam B'chai. It's not possible for the human being, that which is very physical, to see Hashem and still survive and be alive. And as the rabbis tell us, that even malachim that are called chayot, there are certain malach angels that are called chayot, even they don't see everything. So in the word Kilo Irani Adam B'chai, B'chai insinuates on chayot. In other words, not only does not the human being see everything, neither do the greatest angels see everything. Even from them, Hashem is concealed. But they see more than us, because we're more physical, so we see less. how do these levushim come about? How do these concealments come about? That is explained through the concept in the Kabbalah called ishtalshelut, ha'olamot v'yeridatam mimadrega lemadrega. As the worlds are created, they go down in step. And as they go down in step, the garments are increased until they reach this physical world. So this physical world is the lowest world, the most physical of all, and as a result of that, the most concealed. In other words, this is where the light of Hashem is the most concealed from the rest of the world. It is so concealed, as he says, that the choshech, the darkness here, is a double darkness because of the vast amount of klipot, of impure shells that reside here, that they are in opposition to Hashem. Hashem is enod milvado. That's what he is, really is. But they give the impression, no, there's something else. This is how idol worshipping began, as a result of this powerful influence coming from the Sitra Haraf and impure forces, giving the impression that there's other powers, other things that run this world. There's a god of this, and there's a god of that, and there's a cow, and there's a monkey. You know what I mean by that, right? There's everyone is worshiping something else. Why believe that? That's all coming from the impure forces that have power too. Magic, witchcraft. Why do they have power? They really have power. The Kedusha has power, and the impure forces have power. There has to be a balance, otherwise you wouldn't have free will. It would be so obvious. So when we had prophets, you can rest assured that the Sitra Achara, the other side, had their prophets too, false prophets, and individuals who were capable of convincing even those who were righteous that they, that they should be believed, that they knew something. And that was unfortunately, very tempting sometimes. Today, thank God, we don't have that evil inclination of Avodah Zarah, of idol worshiping, but there's still other evil inclinations, especially for money. Money is something that many people will do anything, will kill for it. Doesn't that tell you something? People are willing to kill for money. Why? It's a very powerful, I don't want to call it Elil, God, because it's, even though they treat it as a God, it's a very powerful attraction. And it's all from the Sitra Achara that convinces people that this is something worth working hard for. This is the tachlit of life. This is the purpose of life. You've come here to make money. Isn't that what they tell you about the American dream, a house and a dog? This is what you have to have. If you don't have that, then you didn't make it. When people think of this being the tachlit, this is the life goal, they're very unhappy when they don't have it. Couples get married and they're very materialistic. They break up if they don't have it. I've had a girl come to me and said that she no longer wanted to be engaged to someone that she was engaged to because he only gave her a 4-carat diamond and not a 6-carat diamond. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 4 carats is not enough, because my friend also got 6 carats and I also want to get 6 carats. Just for that? Because your friend, well, what about your husband or your future husband? Isn't he your diamond? Oh, nobody ever told me that. That's what it's supposed to be, that you treat each other like diamonds, not stones. The stones are just a beauty. What is the purpose of life? What is the purpose of marriage? The jewelry, the gifts that you're going to get, the big wedding, and the singer? But people don't understand. They don't have the right priorities, and, and they fail in life. Because even if they do have a lot of money, I guarantee you, most of these people are not happy. Because money doesn't bring happiness. But it tells you it will, because it's a lie. Money will lie to you. The Sitra Achara is a liar. That's its job, to deceive people. That I'm God. This is important. Otherwise you don't make it. You won't make it in life. Yeah, unfortunately, That's part of the challenges that everyone faces in being able to filter out that which is untrue from that which is true, that which is important from that which is not important, priority from not a priority, that which is ultimately the purpose of life from that which is just vain and a waste of time, totally insignificant. Shtuyot, nonsense. People put so much of their money into all these vanities and nonsense. So all of that is caused because of the darkness, the vast amount of darkness in the world. Now he explains, so what's the most important part of creation? Is it the upper worlds or the lower worlds? After all, the lower worlds are more physical, there's more concealment. In the upper worlds, there's less concealment. So this is where he's headed now. In the upper worlds, there's more of a revelation, and perhaps they're more important. And the reason why we have a lower world that's more physical is to reflect what's in the upper world by bringing out the light of Hashem in this world. Because light that comes out of darkness is more discernible, is more powerful. There was darkness. So perhaps the upper worlds are more important because the revelation is greater there, but we need the lower worlds to reflect that which is in the upper world, to bring out what is there, by bringing out this light. Or do we say the lower worlds are more important, because this is where the revelation happens, and the reason why we need the upper worlds is because you need to have an ishtalshelut. You need to start with an upper world to come down to a lower world. So which one is really the more important? So he explains like this. It can't be that the purpose of creation is for the upper worlds. Because if you say the upper worlds are the ikar tachlit, what happened to the upper worlds? The upper worlds, through the ishtalshelut, they come down in level. And that means that there is a hester, there's a concealment of Hashem. Why should there be a hester? In other words, the hester, the concealment of Hashem, is not the goal in itself. The real goal is the revelation of Hashem, not to conceal. Hashem conceals, of course, himself in order to enable revelation, but the real tachlit is to reveal Hashem. So ishtalshelut ha'olamot, the way that Hashem made the world, to gradually conceal himself, was not really intended for the upper worlds. They lose out by having the hester of there. The one who really gains is the lower worlds. So in the lower world, the tachlit is seen by bringing out, by revealing the Or Hashem. And when you reveal the Or Hashem in a place which is dark, that brings tremendous nachat ruach, tremendous happiness to Hashem, that we are able to subdue the sitra achara that He created, the impure forces that He created, that we're able to bring light into that which is dark. In other words, somehow, that light that comes from darkness is much more powerful than any other light. Now, the light that is revealed in the upper worlds is also through levushim, through garments. It's also partially concealed because even those worlds would be mitbatel, that would be completely nullified if the light was too strong. Okay, if that's the case, that things would become nullified before him if the light was too strong, then how does it happen that in this world one can be zocher, one can merit to have the revelation of the light of Hashem without concealment? How does it happen here? It can happen through the Torah. Even though one will accomplish that, subdue the klipot, the impure forces, and reveal the light of Hashem, still, the question is a very important question. How come in this world, even if he does everything right, in other words, he is able to elevate those impurities to Kedusha, he's able to reveal the light of Hashem, how could it be that even in this physical world, one can merit to such an open revelation with less concealment, and nothing will happen to him, that he will be batel? In other words, what will enable him to experience such a revelation that ordinarily is covered up? So he says the way this happens is through the Torah that Hashem gave the Jewish people. That through the Torah that Hashem gave the Jewish people, that has given us oz, that has given us a certain strength, oz v'koach, that is able to receive all this light. In other words, without that Torah, we would not be able to tolerate all this light. And he gives an example. The rabbis tell us that Hashem will give strength to the tzaddikim in the future world to receive their reward, so that they should not become nullified before him. In other words, he will give them strength that they should be able to just be alive and experience him without dying. So this is the same idea. It says it's through the Torah that one receives that extra strength, that he should be able to see the revelation with less concealment. As he says, there's some pesukim that says, "V'lo yikanef od morecha." In other words, that your teacher will no longer be concealed from you through any garment. There will come a time, the prophet said, that we will be able to see much more than we are able to see today. Or the other pasuk, "Ki ayin be'ayin yir'u." Everybody will be able to see with their own physical eyes. "Lo yeh lecha od hashemesh leor yomam." The sun will no longer be your light. This is comparing to the light of Hashem. The light of Hashem will be your light. "Ki Hashem yeh lecha leor olam." Hashem will be your light. So he gives all kinds of examples of how it will be in the future, and where will we take the strength? From the Torah. So the question right now is, but wait a minute, isn't this revelation all in the future? What about this world, the present world? There's so much concealment. So he says that this is really talking about Yemot HaMashiach and Tchiyat HaMetim, the days of Mashiach and the Messianic era and the time of the resurrection. Because that is the time of Tachlit, Ushlemut HaBriyah. That is the time when the world will come to its perfection, to its perfected state. But the question is, isn't that time frame that I just described, the time of reward? We said before, when the people will rise, that is a time to be rewarded. So he says it in a comment, on a side remark, that the main reward is in the Elef HaShvi'i, is in the 7th millennium, not during the Messianic era. During the Messianic era, we will have a very special experience, and God willing, very, very soon it will happen. Similar, but even more than what we had in Matan Torah. When we received the Torah, we heard the voice of Hashem. It says, "Ata oreta ladat Hashem Elokim en omer." You saw, Ata oreta, you saw with your own eyes. It was clear to you. And it says, "Echol ha'am ro'im et hakolot." We even saw, not heard, we saw the voice of Hashem. And we saw it from all corners. No matter which corner you turned, you were able to see it. And as it says in the Tikkunim of the Zohar, "Delet atar delo malil minei imahon." There's not one place where they couldn't hear his voice. This revelation came about and was possible through the Aseret HaDibrot, through the 10 Commandments, which comprise the entire Torah. And this is the internal aspect and the wisdom of Hashem. This is what he wanted. And in that internal aspect of Hashem, there's no hester at all, there's no concealment. As it says in the Pasuk, "Ki be'or panecha natata lanu Torat Chaim." So what happened in Matan Torah? It says, "Parcha nishmatam." As soon as they heard the voice of Hashem, as soon as they heard Anochi, their soul left them. And they died momentarily until Hashem revived them. And how did he revive them? Through the same tal, Torah, through the same dew of the Torah, through the same dew with which he will revive the dead. This tal Torah is called Oz, is also called strength. As the rabbis tell us, "Kol ha'osek b'Torah, tal Torah mechayeu." Whoever engages in Torah, the dew of the Torah will revive him. You know, it's interesting, it says dew. Why not rain? The Torah is compared to various types of rain. If you remember, the Torah describes it as the rain coming down. Rain brings life. Rain transforms the ground. The dew also does something. It has a job, a function. Here, the dew is being used as a way of describing that which revitalizes. Revitalizes that which is not strong. Gives them additional strength. Okay, imagine what happened in Matan Torah. They were on such a high level, but because of the golden calf, because of that sin, they lost out. And the world became more physical, and they became physical as a result. Until when? Until Mashiach comes. So what could have been gained, or what was gained, was lost and will not be restored until Mashiach comes. Because when Mashiach comes, what will happen is that the guf will become slowly but surely more purified. Once you remove the tumah from the world, the body will become more purified. There will be less of evil inclination, no battle with the Yetzer Hara, and the body will become more spiritual. And there's even an opinion that people will stop dying altogether, even though there are others who say that people will die, but only after a long time. So, either way, it's only till the end of the year 6000. Regardless of how this takes place, it will be a much more purified world. And therefore, the human beings who are alive at that time will also be more purified. And as a result of being more purified, we will be able to receive the revelation of Hashem a lot more. In a more powerful way, with less concealment, through the Torah that is called Oz. And as a result of the tremendous light that will shine on us, that light will extend itself to the non-Jewish world as well. In other words, the darkness that was there will all of a sudden become lit. And as the pasuk says, "Valchu goyim leorech," and the goyim will follow you because they will see the light. Or as the other pasuk says, "Bet Yaakov lechuven elecha ve'or Hashem." In other words, they will tell us, "Let us go after you, after the light of Hashem." V'nigla kvod Hashem v'rahu kol basar yachdav. Another pasuk, all in the prophets. This is what will happen when Mashiach comes. The revelation of the glory of Hashem will appear, and all flesh will see. And there's additional pasukim that he brings down towards the end of the perek. Lavo b'nikrat hatzurim. In other words, people will come and will hide in the nicks of the rocks. Mipnei pachad Hashem, because of the glory of Hashem. It will be a very, very momentous moment. It will be frightening to many. Not everybody will be able to handle it. In other words, you will appear, as we say in the prayer, and we ask that Hashem appear in all His glory and His might in the entire world. In other words, for the whole world to see. This Gilui, this final revelation in its immensity, in its openness, in its clarity, for the whole world to see, this will in fact be the culmination of the Tachlit HaBriyah, of the purpose for which Hashem created the world, for the whole world to see finally the truth, the emet. Because this world, as we have seen it and experienced it, is a lot of sheker, a lot of falsehood, which everybody sees, but not everybody is able to filter it out. For the emet to be crystal clear to all, where there's only one religion, one faith, one God, it's only when Mashiach comes. And that is exactly what we're waiting for and praying for, that God willing, we should merit to see it in our times very soon. Amen.